From supernatural stab-em-ups to the titles that redefined gaming, here are the 10 best immersive sims you can play on PC. Let's begin this video with a difficult question. What actually is an immersive sim? Some people will tell you it's any title that emphasises player choice over linear gameplay. Some will say it's a school of design rather than a genre of game. And others will tell you it's any game made by LookingGlass Studios between 1992 and the year 2000. And the tricky thing is that all of these descriptions are sort of correct. Games that let you solve problems in inventive ways with logical outcomes which every single person will experience differently. It's a broad definition then, which for some will include games like Hitman, Metal Gear Solid 5 and the Elder Scrolls series. The originator of this type of game is generally considered to be 1992's Ultimate Underworld, which seems wildly ambitious even by today's standards. And with its spiritual successor Underworld Ascendant on the horizon, now feels like the right time to look back at this PC-friendly, critically revered school of design. Ready to find out more? Well, why not stick around for, in no particular order, the 10 best immersive sims on PC.
Suit integrity damaged.
Dishonored 2 is a great place to start because it proves that the immersive sim is alive, well, and still garnering critical success. And the fact that we got a sequel to 2012's excellent Dishonored proves there's still commercial value in making this type of game. The sequel is set 15 years after the first game and provides even more options in terms of how you play. This time you can play as Corvo or Emily, and the game takes you away from the grimy streets of Dunwall to the faded coastal town of Karnaca. And while the story and characters are compelling, the most impressive thing here is the wealth of options Dishonored 2 provides. And thanks to Harvey Smith's presence at Arkane, this feels like a slick upgrade of the classic LookingGlass games of the 90s. Still rich with choice and dazzling emergent gameplay, but with an elegant modern interface that lets you feel completely in control.
I can't believe it, but I actually miss those times.
From the ruthlessly cutting edge to the venerable classic now, Thief 2: The Metal Age proves that many of the immersive sim's best ideas still only exist in the past. The interface and animation might seem clumsy by modern standard, but the ideas here are still incredible. Light and shadow dictate your movement, and the game is full of famous, thoughtful flourishes which still feel groundbreaking. Things like different surfaces making different noises, and the ability to extinguish light sources using water arrows. But perhaps the greatest thing about Thief 2 is the way it makes you think. You look at the scratchy, hand-drawn maps, analyse your surroundings, and make decisions based on your immediate knowledge. No cutscenes, no scripted movements, just clever, reactive adventures in a world that feels alive, with gentle suggestions as to how to achieve your goals. And because you're contemplating every single move Garrett makes, you really do feel like you've beaten a system and achieved something amazing when you sneak out of a mission with your pockets full of pilfered coin.
This way!
Having established what an immersive sim may or may not be in the intro, a game about building a car in the Finnish countryside in the 90s might seem like a slightly odd fit. Especially if the first two games primed you for 10 entries all about sneaking and assassination. But My Summer Car offers a glimpse of where immersive sims can go next. Shadow and stealth are replaced by meticulously interacting mechanical systems and physics-based gameplay that positively encourages experimentation. You have a tangible, relatable end goal to build a working car, but the manner in which you get there is entirely up to you. It speaks to the potential for versatility in the immersive sim, and its popularity among streamers and YouTubers is precisely because of how engaging and surprising a game it is. Because realistically, you're only going to watch one playthrough of something like Tomb Raider, but a game like My Summer Car will be different every single time, and that's exactly why it deserves a place on this list. In an effort to include some titles that don't have anything to do with LookingGlass, I've also included early access game Consortium, The Tower. The idea behind this is brilliantly weird. The developers describe it as a fourth wall shattering role-playing experience where you essentially play as yourself, controlling another human being, which is quite deep. And because it's an immersive sim, you have the freedom to approach every obstacle however you see fit. This freedom also extends to the narrative though. While there is an overarching story, the decisions you make will ultimately affect the outcome of the game. You can work with the titular Consortium or set yourself directly against them. Or, as you might expect, play both factions off each other. Consortium stands apart from many other titles because although the systems feel emergent, they've deliberately tried to make it less gamey. Instead, building a satisfying narrative is paramount. It's a fascinating new approach with the potential to change how all games tell stories.
Watch your step, 6.
Spiritual successor is a phrase I've already used in this video, but I'm going to use it again in this entry. Because just as Arkane Studios feels like a spiritual successor to Looking Glass, Prey feels like it shares plenty of DNA with System Shock 2. Does this mean I've left System Shock 2 off the list? You'll just have to wait and see, or skip ahead. But like Dishonored 2, Prey takes many of the elements that made classic immersive sims so engaging and makes them far more user-friendly. It's a game that offers limitless possibilities in terms of how you solve problems, but it never feels overwhelming. Within the first hour, you'll be searching rooms for alternate routes and experimenting with the wonderfully inventive glue gun. And the fact it's an overflowing, inventive toolbox never stops it feeling like a game. Yes, you'll have loads of cool gear and skills to play with, but Prey also has a story with a decent central mystery and compelling characters, and that makes it a great place to start if you're looking to experience your first ever immersive sim. As a series, BioShock may have edged away from the open-ended games which inspired it, but there's still a strong, sinewy connection to the Looking Glass games of the 90s, not least because Ken Levine worked there before founding Irrational Games with Jonathan Che and Robert Fermier. If anything, BioShock is so slick that you almost miss just how rich and reactive much of it is. It's a solid enough FPS that you could probably run and gun the whole way, but plasmids always provide alternatives to direct combat, letting you set traps, turn enemies against each other, and use the environment to your advantage. Its systems seem less exploitable than some of the other entries on this list, but it's still a brilliant example of how to include immersive elements in a mainstream game. However you look at it, BioShock remains a slick, cerebral celebration of brilliant game design.
I've never been one to question Providence.
Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines is one of those games where the degree of ambition doesn't quite sync with the execution, but it's still an impressive, diverting, unique experience. Like many other immersive sims, it takes RPG elements and makes them more immediate, letting players choose how they behave in this bleak version of modern-day LA based on the Vampire the Masquerade pen and paper RPG. The beating, blood-filled heart is player choice. You can pick things like powers and weapons and choose how you interact with the vast cast of characters. And while the vanilla game is certainly interesting, you will need to install the fan-made patch for it to work properly. It's also a far more satisfying experience if you pick up some of the mods that bring the final game closer to what many fans hoped it would be in the first place. Clumsy combat and some savage difficulty spikes can't stop this from being a wonderfully lavish vampiric tale.
Let tonight's proceedings serve as a reminder to our community that we must adhere to the code that binds our society.
Much like our last entry, S.T.A.L.K.E.R Shadow of Chernobyl is a game hamstrung by its own staggering ambition. Set in the classic nuclear wasteland we gamers know and love, the world of S.T.A.L.K.E.R is crafted to be reactive, emergent, and completely non-linear. It's a world brought to life by a series of interactive systems. Non-scripted, AI-driven NPCs react to the environment even when the player isn't present. And the physics engine utilises destructible objects, realistic ballistics, and skeletal animation. There's even a dynamic weather system which affects how different surfaces act. In this respect, S.T.A.L.K.E.R is full of incredible ideas that embody what a modern immersive sim should be. However, the presence of numerous bugs prompted a community-built remake in 2008, but if anything, that just tells you how important Shadow of Chernobyl is to the people who love it. So it's not perfect then, but it's still a massively inspiring game. Like some of the other entries here, the Looking Glass heritage is strong in Deus Ex. Not only did the six-person team come from Looking Glass's Austin studio, including Warren Spector and Harvey Smith, but you can actually see it in Deus Ex's blend of shooting and stealth, like an augmented Venn diagram of Thief and System Shock.
And it's not just systemically brilliant either. Deus Ex's lyrical vision of the near future, warring corporations, injustice and conspiracy is as brilliant and evocative as it was back in 2000. It's a world that feels full of people and places, not just cutscenes and enemies. An empathetic, imaginative, frighteningly immersive game that offers a different experience for every single person who plays it. If you're used to your choices in games being limited to sneak or kill everything, Deus Ex feels refreshingly open, and everyone who owns a PC owes it to themselves to try it.
Are you sure you pressed the right button?
Yes, I only mentioned Ultima Underworld in the intro, but I was never, ever going to leave off System Shock 2. The sequel to the 1994 original, co-developed by Irrational Games and Looking Glass Studios, still feels as fresh and inventive now as it did back then. This is partly down to how it rations and divides the amazing range of powers it offers. When you begin a new game, you're given a series of choices about what kind of character you play, represented as training decisions made early on in your career. After that, you're left to explore the abandoned Von Braun starship as you attempt to unpick what actually happened. It's one brilliant touch of many which highlights from the offset just how many different ways there are to play System Shock 2. Whether you choose hacking, weapon proficiency or psionic skills, every problem you encounter in the game can be resolved in multiple ways. It's worth playing for its heritage alone, because without it we wouldn't have the likes of Bioshock or Deus Ex, but even 19 years after release, System Shock 2 feels haunting, innovative and completely essential. And best of all, we're due a remake of the original game in 2020, and Warren Spector is apparently working on System Shock 3.
Well done. I'm uploading some more modules.
And there's your lot. Are there any brilliant games you feel fit the description of this video, and have I made the right choices? I'd love to hear what you think. Please give this video a like in the most inventive way you can imagine, and subscribe to Logitech G for more weekly shows and features.